Alright, so I got this junkyard steering column on my tool cart here. I've already taken off the intermediate shaft and the wiring harness and that cable that was a pain in the butt at the junkyard, and some of the parts that aren't the right color. Got it stripped out. The only thing about these, which I knew this taking it off the junkyard, but I kind of forgot about it, is if you don't have the key, you got to drill the lock out. When you put the key in it, goes in there obviously, and this hole right here holds the key cylinder inside. There's a little tab, and when you put the key on and turn it on, that releases this tab and it pulls it out. Well, if you don't have the key, you're stuck drilling it out. I mean, there might be another way to do it. I don't know if there's another way to do it, but that's the way that I do it. It takes about 5 minutes. And then I would notice on this steering wheel, you can actually get your finger behind the wheel and the clock spring right here. So that other one, I couldn't even get a jaw puller behind there without messing up the clock spring. So this thing is obviously, you know, there's no play in this one, but this one is obviously the way it should be. My guess is whoever worked on it last time took this nut and screwed it down so hard with the impact that it went past the splines and into this clock spring. And that's what ruined the clock spring. When he got it back, his screws and all that stuff didn't work, and that's why, because this was on there so tight it ruined that clock spring. And it ruined the steering column too, basically. So I got this car. These aren't too bad. This looks a lot worse than what it really is. Just take apart the panels there, and you know, you pull all the wiring off, and there's a brace that goes across here you have to pull off. It's got four 10mm bolts, and then you have to take this bolt off, which goes to your intermediate shaft. This here goes up in there. That's what connects to your steering box. There's actually two. You got this one and then the one out by the steering box. At the junkyard, I pulled the whole shaft just because I did, and you know, they don't charge extra for it. But what I'm going to do on this one is just pull it out from inside here and not mess with the outside. And I think these only go on one way. I hope. I'm pretty sure. I think they're oriented. They have a certain way they go on. So you just pull that bolt out, and then there's 4 nuts, 10mm nuts, that bring this whole column down. There you go. So then you just yank that out, and I was going to leave the steering wheel on the other one because there's no point in taking it off, but then I remembered he has a different color on his steering wheel on the back part, and you can, there's the shop manager, aka a-hole, but you can actually if you pull the wheel off, you can get this whole piece, this plastic piece off. It's just held on by these little clips. So I'm gonna pull this, I'm gonna get the steering column in and then pull this wheel off, change this out, and put the wheel back on. Alright, well, I'm going to make an executive decision here and leave this wheel on with the black on it. But I think it might look kind of weird with the tan and the black two-tone steering wheel. So this black actually matches the interior. He's got other black parts in it. It's not out of laziness. I just think it would look kind of funky with the tan back and the black wheel. I think this looks fine the way it is. So we're going to leave this in there and leave that steering wheel on. But I know without a doubt, if we ever take the steering wheel off, it'll definitely come off, because there's so much more room behind it compared to the other one that, I mean, this isn't over torqued. And you can see here, it's no movement at all on it. So we're gonna put the rest of this together and go from there. The only thing I would say is on that cable that gave me hassle at the junkyard, which I couldn't do at the junkyard anyway, if you pull the lock cylinder out, because this goes into the lock cylinder, This will not come out if the lock cylinder's in, but with the lock cylinders out, you just press this down and this pulls right out. And that's much easier than taking this whole entire console apart, because this cable goes all the way up to the wheel, all the way up to the key, all the way around the dash, under the console, over to the shifter. And it's pretty ignorant how they got it routed in there. So it'll save me a lot of time. It's actually saved me a lot of time just using his old cable. Pull the cylinder, push on this, it comes right out. I mean, you won't be able to do that at the junkyard unless you have the key, get lucky in the keys there. If you get lucky in the keys there, then it's easy. Or you can just cut it if you know you got to change the key anyway. Alright, so I got the new column in. I'm going to leave this panel off for now, because as you can see, I got good access to the wiring harness. This thing's pulled really tight. It makes me wonder if that's got something to do with the window problem. But I got good access to the fuses and the wiring harness under here. I kind of misspoke in the last video about the, it might have been this video, I don't even know, about the keys and the transponder. I actually used his transponder and key, of course, so I don't have to reprogram the key. This is the little transponder that bolts to the steering column. So, as you can see, no movement, very tight. Got the horn, starts up, cruise, cruise works. So that was all due to the clock spring, which I suspected that originally. I don't know if I didn't go too far in depth about the clock spring, but this is a clock spring. This goes behind your steering wheel, obviously. And this is what controls, this is what connects your radio controls, your cruise, your horn, all that stuff to the stationary part of your steering column. So when you're turning the wheel, these things are going back and forth, these wires are going back and forth. All this is a wiring harness rolled up in on like a clock spring. And if this thing malfunctions, or sometimes these tiny wires in here will fray over time going back and forth, you'll lose your horn or whatever controls you have on your steering wheel. Back in the day, they used to have like a little cheap plastic ring in there with a ground around it, and that's what would ground out your horn. But now that we have all these controls on our steering wheel, they've all went to these clock springs. And anyway, yeah, so if you have a problem with your radio controls or your horn, cruise control, stuff like that, it's very well possible that it's this. Which it's actually easy. If you pull the steering covers off, you can test before and after the clock spring to make sure, to see if it's working or not. It's actually a pretty easy test. So at this point, we're back to where the steering column's tight. That part's fixed. He's got the controls back. So now we're back to the original problem, which is a pair stick draw, and the windows won't roll up and down while the door's open. So we're going to tackle that next and see what we can find on that.